There are two primary programs that we need to talk about today in this SBA CARES Act stimulus package. The first is what's called the PPP program. Many of you have probably already heard about this. It's called the Paycheck Protection Program. The second is EIDL. It stands for Economic Injury Disaster Loans. Really dig into this now. I remind everybody, I am not your CPA. Do not take what I'm telling you as the gospel. You must communicate with your CPA or banker or SBA lender to really verify everything. I'm just trying to give everybody an overview as we at Commercial Fleet understand it as it sits today. It has changed a lot over just the last week. So let's get into the PPP program, the Paycheck Protection Program. It's a heck of a stimulus package that's available to business owners. A few specifics on it. Number one, the PPP program is administered by SBA approved banks. It's different than the EIDL program, which is administered by the SBA program. The PPP is administered by SBA approved banks. A few things that are extremely beneficial on this. Number one, all loan fees are waived. Most banks will begin to accept the application starting tomorrow. There is no collateral required on a PPP. There is no personal guarantee required on a PPP loan. And these loans are available until June 30th of 2020. Why June 30th of 2020? Because there's $377 billion allotted to this, and they figure that that we will burn through that money. Now, the Secretary of the Treasury came out this week and said that the government will put more money to these programs if needed. And while I'm not an economist or an expert, I would for sure say that we will run out of the money very quickly on this. So we want to get your application in as quickly as possible. The other thing on the PPP is there will be no payments due for a minimum of 6 months. So let's talk about who qualifies for the PPP program. And I'm going to read some specific text, and I apologize if it's a little bit on the boring side, but it's really important for everybody to understand the nuts and bolts. Who qualifies for the PPP program? A small business with fewer than 500 employees that was in business on or before February 15th of 2020. Here's what's really unique. This can be an S corporation, a C corporation, an LLC, or a sole proprietorship or an independent contractor. Very unusual that that is available. And some of our clients at Commercial Fleet are not corporations. They are sole proprietorships. That's your name, DBA, the name of your business. And a lot of times that's harder for you to get approved. In this situation, you're perfectly qualified to get a PPP loan. The PPP loan also includes certain nonprofits and tribal groups and veteran groups. And when obtaining the PPP loan, you need to certify that your business was economically affected or that economic uncertainty makes the loan necessary. I need you to hear that because it's really fascinating. You will self-declare. You literally don't even have to prove it. You just have to certify that your business has been affected by the coronavirus, and that could be enough for you to qualify for the PPP. Let's talk about what you can use the PPP for, because there is the provision of forgiveness in which the PPP loan, you will be forgiven if you do certain things. You will not have to pay it back. So let's get into a few of those details. The PPP is the stimulus package to keep payroll running, to keep people employed. So PPP to determine monthly payroll costs includes salary, wages, commissions, vacation pay, sick pay, leave pay, medical pay, payment to IRA contributions, group healthcare coverages, and local and state taxes. In other words, all of the payroll expense can be used for the PPP program for you to qualify. It does not include federal taxes, and it also does not include payroll for those making more than $100,000 a year. This is very, very important. If you're applying for the PPP and you're trying to figure out what can you get, how much can you qualify for, you have to stop at $100,000. So the first $100,000 is included, but anything in excess is not included in determining the average monthly payroll. So you could say to yourself, if you had someone in your office making $100,000 a year, they're going to take the trailing 12 months, they're going to divide that by 12, so call that $8,333, and you can get 2.5 times the $8,333 as a loan per employee. So I hope everybody understood how that math gets calculated. You're taking the average over the last 12 months, and the maximum that you can receive is 2.5 times the average payroll over the last 12 months, under $100,000, caps out at $100,000 for as many employees as you have. Very, very powerful stimulus package called the PPP. Now, what can we use the money for? The money can be used for payroll for you, your employees, but you can also use the money for rent, mortgage obligations, utilities, and other obligations you may have. Stick to that because I'm going to come back to that in just a second. If you don't use the money, the PPP money, for the intended purpose of what I just outlined, you can use the money at an extremely low interest rate, 0.5% is what they expect it to be, 0.5%, and you will have a payback period that will range from 2 years to 10 years on that. Very, very powerful. Even if you didn't use it to keep your staff employed and get it forgiven, because if you use it for the intended purpose, which is to keep people on your payroll, you can get that loan forgiven. It means you pay nothing for it. That's stimulus. I like what they're doing there. But even if you took the money and you didn't use it for what it was intended, it can convert to a 0.5% loan to you. Now, when do you have to pay it back? The loan term specified by the Treasury guidance is 2 years. So 2 years could be, they could extend it if it's not for the purpose designed, it could extend the term. And loan payments are deferred for the first 6 months. So if you take the PPP, you don't have to pay it. You have 6 months of deferment. There is no prepayment penalty, and if it's used in the proper way, it can be forgiven and waived. Now, I've had a number of customers ask us this question, because this happened to people in 2008 and 2009, where perhaps their mortgages were forgiven, a portion of their mortgages were forgiven, and they were then issued a 1099 for the difference, which became taxable. And in the CARES Act, just to read this, it is not allowed to be treated as taxable income. I'm going to read you specifically. Any portion of the loan that is forgiven is excluded from taxable income. So that means that the government is not going to 1099 you if you took out $100,000 or $200,000. The government is not going to send you a 1099 for what they forgave because of that clause. Powerful stuff. How do you get this loan forgiven? How does it become an opportunity for you to get the loan from the government and not have to pay it back? You are eligible for loan forgiveness for the amounts you spent over the next 8 weeks after receiving the loan for certain qualifying expenses. The qualifying expenses of the business over the 8-week period include payroll costs, rent, interest on mortgage debt, and utilities. Very, very powerful stuff. So here's something that's really important. Because the PPP is being issued by a bank and not directly from the SBA, it will be the bank's responsibility within 60 days to approve or deny the forgiveness. Sounds really good. I think there's a big question mark based on that sentence there. So I'm going to read it again. The bank who granted the loan is who will determine the loan forgiveness based on the type of criteria above, meaning the documentation that you provide that complies to you using the money for forgiveness. The business will have to request a forgiveness of the loan with providing evidence to the bank, and the bank will have 60 days to approve or deny the loan, the forgiveness rather. This loan, the EIDL, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, is the loan that triggers the $10,000 that everyone's been talking about, which is basically this concept of free money being given to everybody in $10,000 increments in as little as 3 days. You don't get that $10,000 if you apply directly for the PPP. You have to apply for the EIDL. So you will get, if you apply for the EIDL, you will get, as long as there's enough money, $10,000 relief in 3 days, and then you will find out if you were approved for the EIDL loan. My guess is that by filling out the simple application at SBA.gov, filling out the simple EIDL application, you will probably get $10,000 if you do it quickly. And then you will probably be contacted and asked for additional information, which I'm going to go through in just a little bit of what we think the additional information that you need to prepare is. So let's talk about a few things about the EIDL. Who's eligible for it? Businesses and nonprofits with no more than 500 employees, again, sole proprietorships with or without employees, independent contractors. All states and political subdivisions qualify as disaster areas, so states can actually apply for this as well. Here's what you need to qualify. Your credit score is needed to qualify, and once again, you will have to self-certify that you have been affected by the coronavirus and your business has fallen on hard times because of corona. So it does matter about your credit score, even though I've read that they are being very delinquent on credit scores for this program. But you will also, once again, self-certify that your business has been hurt. In other words, you may not have to actually prove it. The maximum loan amount for applicants who demonstrate economic injury and the ability to repay may receive up to $2 million. The EIDL advances up to $10,000, and they will be processed within 3 days, and these advances do not have to be repaid. So if 10 grand helps you right now, you should immediately apply for the EIDL loan. And then that will trigger a deeper application process for you. You must use for the following purposes: providing sick leave to employees, maintaining payroll during business disruptions and slowdowns, meeting increased supply chain costs. In other words, if you're, let's say you're in the restaurant business and your normal supplier can't get you the food or product that you typically would sell, and you have to go to a different provider and they're more expensive. That's the difference in supply chain. Making rent or mortgage payments and repaying debts that cannot otherwise be paid due to lost revenue. So the EIDL is much more like a traditional SBA loan, and it is issued by the SBA, whereas the PPP is issued by SBA approved banks. The loan terms, the borrower may receive up to $2 million, dependent on the borrower's demonstrated economic injury and ability to repay. The interest rate will be no more than 4%, and the loan term will be no more than 30 years. So you can get a relatively low interest rate for a long period of time. Personal guarantees are required unless the EIDL advance or the loan amount is $200,000 or less. If it's less than $200,000 that you're applying for, you do not need to issue your personal guarantee. Pretty powerful. If $200,000 is what you need to get through this corona thing, then you don't even have to put up a personal guarantee. Okay? Pretty powerful stuff. There is a waiver on this. The EIDL program waives the 1 year in business prior to the disaster requirement for businesses, and therefore you only need to be in business on February 1st of 2020, and you will have met the requirement for the EILD loan. As a business owner, whether you're a corporation, LLC, S Corp, C Corp, or sole prop, or independent contractor, you can qualify for the PPP program and potentially get that loan forgiven, not to be paid back, Or if you're looking for a little bit more of a traditional SBA loan, you can apply for the EIDL program. So if you want to apply for the PPP, the place you start is going to an approved SBA bank. Now, some of you should call your local banker and say, are you an approved SBA bank? Should go to sba.gov and look for a list of approved SBA banks. It's not hard to find them. They're wide open for business and they know what to do to process this stuff as efficiently as they know how to do it. There are a lot of things that have not been figured out in either of these programs, so there's still a lot of moving parts. But the application can be started right away and should be started right away from an SBA lender, an SBA bank lender. If you want the EIDL program, you apply directly at sba.gov for that. Two different sources of the money, two different programs. Now let's talk about the action steps that you will most likely be required to take. The first, you got to pick the program that you think is best for your business. They can be combined. If you choose wrong, you can eventually combine them, but you really, and I'm a little unclear on this, whether it is okay to have a PPP and an EILD. I'm not 100% sure on that. You need to contact your bank as soon as possible to get the organization registered and the application started. You will probably, most likely, need to prepare documentation as follows: the average monthly payroll and the average monthly full-time employee list based on the 12 months from April 19th through March of 2020. That's the trailing 12 months. What does your payroll look like and what does your employee count look like for that period of time? You'll need to also prepare the average payroll by category: salary, hourly, commission, vacation, sick leave, etc. You'll need to provide what is your monthly rent, what is the amount that you've been spending on utilities for the last 12 months. If you have a mortgage, what is the interest that you're paying on the building that you may own? And then the basic stuff, the tax ID number, the full legal entity number, and then of course the ownership breakdown. It's a pretty simple process to get started right now, and everyone on the stream should be doing this. I wish everybody has the courage to take action and go get your hands on this money. You are crazy if you don't take action. If you're sitting on the ship and you feel as though it's about to crash on the shore and you don't pull the rudder or at least turn it to one side or the other, we have nobody to blame but ourselves for that. Now is the time to have the courage to take action and start the process to go get your hands on this money.